let's talk about how direct supplier relationships can improve digital executions. So as you all probably well already know, supply path optimization is one of the most important facets of maximizing return on ad spend, and it is an increasingly common offering among demand-side platforms and other buy-side technologies. However, if you're a buyer that's looking to understand and take advantage of the best paths to purchase, a direct supplier relationship can make a huge difference, and we're going to talk about why right now. So who am I? My name's Albert Wang. I'm on the product marketing team here at Beeswax, now a freewheel company. And with me on the line, I do have Christine Geritana as well on our strategic partnerships team. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to start by talking about the supplier relationship benefit overview, as in why you should look to establish these relationships in the first place. And from there, we'll segue into the specific benefits of direct media owner relations, as well as the benefits of direct SSP relations before closing with a little bit of Q&A. So moving right along, why bother opening up these supplier relationships in the first place? It's pretty straightforward. When you have direct supplier relationships, you have the opportunity to improve access to the supply that you're looking to purchase, and you can also take advantage of better pricing economics. So the long and short of it is that these direct supply relationships represent opportunities for increased performance and more efficient spend. As we proceed, I do want you guys to keep two key types of supplier relationships in mind. The first being media owners, them being the traditional publishers and broadcasters you think of when you think of a publisher. And these are companies that typically create or syndicate their own content. So good examples of this are going to be companies like ESPN or Hulu, companies like those. The other supplier relationship that is important to keep in mind are going to be the supply side platforms as well as exchanges, or the tech partners that really help the media owners make their inventory available. So these are going to be companies like Freewheel, Pubmatic, Mopub, etc. And having these direct relationships will enable that improved supply access and better pricing economics in different forms that we're about to cover right now. So starting with the media owner side of the fence, when it comes to improved supply access, the reason why they can improve supply access is very straightforward, because they own it. But not only do they own it, they're also an expert on their properties and know their audiences better than anyone else. So for example, even if your audience isn't their primary audience, they understand the pockets where your audience are going to be, as well as how to get the most performance from their owned and operated properties. So if you're trying to run video ads on Hulu towards a specific demographic, and you have one show in mind, Hulu would definitely be able to recommend other shows that it might make sense to advertise on to reach that same demographic. So as a result of this, direct relationships with media owners can also really help improve your targeting efficiency as well. Further, having a direct connection really also means getting improved access to new opportunities with that media owner. So if you have a direct relationship and that media owner is releasing new content or adding new supply that's relevant to you, they'll actually alert you about these upcoming offerings. And it can actually happen before the broader market knows it's available, because when you have that direct relationship, you are that publisher or media owner's customer, and they have an incentive to keep you happy and to make sure that you're getting access to the supply that you're looking for to foster that strong business relationship and continue a fruitful relationship going forward. This also means that you could get access to custom and curated opportunities by that publisher, and they'll again continue to provide direct alerts for what they feel is appropriate, where if that relationship does exist. On the pricing side of the fence, it also makes sense to have a direct relationship with a media owner, because that opens up opportunities for custom pricing, as opposed to, for example, going through the set rates that might be offered through an exchange or a supply side platform. So if you already know that you're going to be placing a pretty hefty buy through a specific media owner, it's really worth going to them directly, as opposed to taking the cookie cutter deals and really taking over and allowing yourself to negotiate rates on your own terms. So that also basically means that you can help get the exact supply and pricing that you're looking for, rather than going through middlemen, and basically directly advocate for yourself if you're already spending on certain publishers. Next, I want to talk about the supply side platforms as well as exchanges. So when you're going direct with SSPs and exchanges, there's a lot of reasons why it can provide better supply access, but the first and foremost that I do want to touch on is the fact that exchanges and SSPs work with a huge number of partners, and they actually have a lot more direct visibility into what inventory is most performant in specific scenarios. Since they also possess direct connections to media owners, they're actually also able to broker direct introductions to any media owner that a buyer, such as yourselves, might be specifically interested in. They are also able to provide alerts of any unique publishers that they might be onboarding that could be of interest to you. And also having direct relationships with these exchanges does provide stronger insight into sensitive categories, like, for example, legal drinking age deals, and can help you get creative pre-approved. Having these direct relationships also enables quicker access to any upcoming media promotions, allowing you as the buyer to respond quicker than when you have to rely on a DSP, for example, as a middleman, which is pretty important when it comes to taking advantage of any high demand opportunities as they are presented. So an example of that could be, for example, right now, March Madness, and later on, any back to school deals or any seasonal offerings as they may be arising. Next, on the pricing side, with regard to SSPs and exchanges, worth noting that DSPs frequently will charge a seat fee as a percentage of spend when they manage any buys through SSPs. And when you establish a direct relationship with an SSP that allows for direct billing, you can actually take that into your own hands and save on margin, to increase performance and any spend effectiveness by that saving. The long and short of this means that you can get better pricing on the categories that you're already spending on. Something else that's important to keep in mind is that sometimes exchanges and SSPs have preferred pricing. So when you work with a publisher's SSP of choice, that can actually also lead to better deals when buying through that SSP as well. And further, sometimes supply partners will also send alerts that they're having a deal to keep you aware of any relevant or unique supply to your business. So before moving directly into Q&A, I do want to go over some of the frequently asked questions that are worth asking any media owners or SSPs and exchanges that you are thinking about opening up a direct relationship with. So on the media owner side of the fence, it's always a good idea to ask about any unique creative formats or inventory that they support. And a reason for that could be because you're just looking to find out what sort of high impact creative they have available that will help you stand apart from the crowd. Also important to know of any creative or competitive restrictions that they might have on their inventory. For example, if a company has a huge buy from Pepsi, they might be a little bit less enthused to take your spend if you're representing Coke. Also worth understanding any approval processes that exist to buy that publisher's inventory, just to understand what sort of lead time might make sense to set up before running a campaign with them and what's necessary to do so. And finally, if it's applicable, always worth asking about whether or not they support any restricted category advertising if it applies to your business. In restricted categories, we've got a couple of them listed as examples, include anything around alcohol, drugs, as well as maybe gambling. So long story short, maybe reconsider advertising firearms on a site geared towards children. It's usually not a good idea. On the SSP side, it's always a good idea to understand what sort of premium publishers they work with and whether that inventory is made available through the open market or PMP, just to get private marketplaces, just to get an understanding of whether or not, of who you'll be buying on and where you'll have your inventory running. Also want to understand what creative formats they support. So for example, native or rewarded video is not offered by every exchange, but if those sorts of creative are really important for your business, definitely make sure that the exchanges are able to offer the sort of inventory that you're looking for before you start a relationship with them. Continuing right along, I think the next two questions really go hand in hand when it comes to global traffic availability, as well as data and identity partner availability, just to make sure that you will be able to run the sorts of campaigns that you're trying to run where you're running them. And particularly with data and identity, this is seeing increased importance as we start entering a world without cookies and where identity data starts to become a little more scarce. And finally, of course, always need to understand whether or not they support direct billing relationships, and if so, what the requirements to satisfy those are. Not every DSP enables these sorts of direct relationships. Not every SSP allows for the direct billing. So if you're looking to save that seat fee, make sure that you understand whether or not the SSP is able to accommodate that. So from here, we're going to swing into some Q&A. Of course, I just want to leave a final note is with you if you are a Beeswax customer. If you're looking for an introduction to an SSP or publisher that we can facilitate, please reach out to your CSMs. So without further ado, we'll start taking questions in the order they were asked. And the first one that we have is going to be whether or not there's any indirect inventory that cannot be accessed directly that is still valuable. Christine?
Yeah, so I saw that question. So yeah, I would say yes. As you know, if you're a current Beeswax customer, you know that we have about 50 external supply integrations. So that being said, we're not integrated with every inventory source out there. And so we do get some resold inventory through our current supply partners. And while the most direct path is usually the most efficient, I will say when inventory is resold by a larger SSP, there can be some added values such as added data to that inventory. There can be, extra technology that SSP offers. So yeah, I would say definitely some of that indirect inventory is still very valuable.
Fantastic. I did see somebody raise their hand, and if you did have a question, please ask it through the Q&A window, and we'll get to it as soon as possible. So next, we have a question that came in, and it is, how many of your publishers look at open market logs for publishers? And as a publisher, should we be approaching the clients that they see in their logs?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot from our supply partners, not as much from the publishers, but more from the SSPs. So when you're buying through Beeswax, most of our customers are buying through the Beeswax seat. Unless you have a direct billing relationship with that supply partner, your spend will show up as, under the overall Beeswax seat. And so that being said, they won't necessarily see which client it is from those logs, but they may be able to tell from the creative ID, because in the creative ID, it does have the customer name, as well as a lot of the time, the supply partners will reach out to me directly and ask for a buyer report so they can understand which customers are accessing their inventory and whether, they should facilitate a direct introduction.
Next question is going to be trying to understand how buyers can avoid DSP fees when working directly with SSPs. They thought that all bidding had to go through a bidder and DSP. So how can they establish those direct SSP relationships?
Yeah, so this question totally makes sense. So you do have to go through the DSP, but Beeswax offers two different types of seats. There's the Beeswax seat where we do tack on a 5% media seat fee, or a customer can have a direct relationship with the SSP partner, and then they will forego that 5% fee. They'll avoid all DSP fees, and they'll just have to maintain that billing relationship directly with the SSP. If you're interested in setting, a direct seat up with one of our supply partners, you can reach out to your CSM who will connect you with the SSP directly, and you can get that paperwork started.
Fantastic. Next question is, to go direct, what kind of size or total budgets are really required to have or start that conversation? Christine, if you could answer this question from the perspective of media owners as well as SSPs, that'd be great.
Yeah, so this really depends, on the SSP or media owner. Some have a minimum spend threshold, say they'll require for a direct seat $10,000 a month of spend, and some don't have that at all. So it really depends on which media owner SSP you're interested in, and we can go source out that information for you if you want to start that conversation.
Fantastic. So looking at it, this is your last chance to ask questions live while we've got the subject matter expert on the line. If no additional questions, we will conclude this on time, about 15 minutes in. All right, I think that is all the questions that we have on direct supplier relationships. So thank you for your time, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording here.